Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the latest edition of Coach Ford Speaks podcast, and I am your host, Mr. Dreams to Reality, Coach Justin Ford. I'm happy to have you on this maybe beautiful Friday. I haven't looked at the weather report this morning, but last night we had some storms, which I didn't know about. I was knee deep in basketball practice for 4 hours last night. So today's podcast is an exciting one for me. It's not a gloomy one. It's not one of those where you would think I would be upset when I talk about this topic. And in fact, it's I would say one of the greatest aspects of my journey um, with who's made me who I am today, and what's allowed me to get here, right? And what's allowed me to become the individual that I am today. And this is the power. First, I want to thank God for giving me some kind of internal drive. It's a blessing, and the blessing is to have the ability and opportunity to overcome some things. And what are we talking about? Overcoming adversity in a journey of triumph, right? And so, uh, life will throw you some curveballs. I was throwing one this week, and I'm praying for a family that lost a loved one, praying for people who are going through battles, and there's a lot going on. And it's a constant reminder that, hey, there's no complaining. There's there's no reason to complain. There's no reason to um, not pursue the life that you want, because we're not promised, and life is precious, and it's one of the time is one of the most precious resources that we have. It's infinitely more valuable than anything. It's infinitely more valuable than money. And so I'm going to preface this and say time is not money. Time is infinitely more valuable than money. And so I encourage you to uh, focus on where you're spending your time and energy, and the things that serve you or serve other people. And so uh, my biggest mission here is to empower youth through mentorship and to push them to excellence and all off the court. And that can stem um, beyond just the youth, but people in their normal everyday life, you know, and understanding that I personally have an opportunity, and that many other people have an opportunity, and I'm getting better. I've gotten better at doing the podcast, becoming more consistent, getting the content out here. I finally got my hair cut. Um, but yeah, so the episode is overcoming adversity and journey of triumph. So I'm going to be looking down today because I actually have my show notes. I actually got them typed out, actually put my thoughts together on this, taking the time and being a little bit more cerebral on the things that I'm doing. So welcome to the podcast, and we're exploring, my journey of how I turned struggles into strengths, both on and off the court. And, my story begins with a childhood marked by profound loss. And that was the death of my parents. This tragedy left me um, angry and frustrated as a child, and struggling to make sense of a dark world that seemed, and at that time, I'm not going to say unfair, because I wouldn't have known the term unfair. I just didn't understand. I didn't understand the why, right? And any child would ask the why. I get asked whys all the time. I say this is the greatest why generation of all time. And this topic is very humbling to me, but it's the thing that gives me strength and pushes me. So the person listening to this, I just want you to know you'll overcome. And so um, you'll overcome with the right things. And I'm going to talk about that in this episode. How to overcome adversity, and what are some things that you can do in order to become this person or individual. Um, and like I said, I was blessed and fortunate that God put something in me that drove me for more and better. And I'm not going to say control, but there's a little bit of a control idea in there. A little bit of, I want to control my life in terms of not settling for the life that I was given. And that was given to me early. And I can only thank God for planting that seed within me and bring me to this point, because what doesn't work for you works on you. And so um, Dr. Myron Golden says that a lot, and I just thank him um, for his giving his gifts out to the world. And so here's my story, right? So my parents died very early. My father, the uh, the month before I was born, and my mother died 3 years later. So it was just me and my sister having to move place to place. We still had love. Our family gave us love. They took care of us. They did what they're supposed to. Um, and so I was blessed for that. It gave me different views of life, and an opportunity to see the world in a different way, in a different light. I don't know any other life than this one. So I couldn't change it. I couldn't tell you what it's like to change it. I can't wish for anything different. I can only tell you that when you wish for it, then it's hard to overcome. You use it and you let it push you and motivate you, and it drives you, and it puts something in you. So I didn't understand what that anger was for as a child, but I understand what the anger was for as an adult. It was like a combustion engine, right? Or no, what's a better term? But anyways, it was a reaction chamber, and so that seed of anger and frustration, it would grow within me in a bad way. In some part where I was just acting out as a child because I didn't know any better. And then so God's good, right? And so I was going through my challenges and struggle as a child, and we went from family to family. My family did the best they could to provide for us, and they did good. It was a good life. I was exposed to all spectrums of life: people who lived wealthy, people who didn't, and all the in between. People who owned businesses, people who um, work jobs, and I always looked at the business owners. I always like, man, how can I be a business owner? And I had that in me early because I had to observe life. I observed a lot of things in life. Why? Because I didn't have a choice but to observe. Um, when you're living in somebody else's home, you have to observe a lot more. You have to be cognitive of things. You have to pay attention. And so uh, I was blessed with that ability. So I get emotional because most people will judge you um, without knowing your true story. So when I'm dealing with these athletes, I, I, I take the time to learn them. I take the time to understand what makes them tick. I take the time to get to know them and understand what is it that they want for life, or what direction they're going, or what kind of sense of purpose there is, and help them cultivate and figure out these emotions and frustrations they may have. And then we build from there. And that's the biggest thing, is understanding that I have to help them, and I have to help guide them in a way that will make them better. And I always do it right. But I'm an expert in that at that point, an expert in overcoming Mr. Dreams to Reality, Coach 4. And so this is not a somber podcast. I'm just working on my speech and working on my ability to have conversations. I'm working on reading my notes and slowing down, and really giving you the points, especially for my editing software. So it's not so much all over the place. And so that's the power. And so back to what I was saying, but it was through the darkness that I found a beacon of hope. And I'm not going to say basketball. I'm going to praise God. I want to thank my grandmother. I want to thank my family uh, for doing all that they could. I thank my family for um, loving me, right? And I love them for even in the things that we didn't know. And when a person doesn't know, you can't fault them and be mad at them. You can only say, you know what, you did your best that you could. I'm not mad at you. I thank you. I love you. And when you get to that kind of power, you get to that understanding, but that only comes from God. And everybody has their problems, right? And so, uh, I'm thankful my grandma took us. She took us in, and she moved us down to Annapolis, Missouri, and uh, down on the land, as they call it. And she took us to church, and I didn't understand what this church thing was, man. What you talk about? It was just thing we went when we went to visit grandma on the weekends. Uh, and so, yeah, and that was the start of it. And she took us down to school. We enrolled in my school down there. We enrolled down there. And then I started learning. Then things started to build off of it. I was blessed with some great people in my life. The community as a whole, they were loving. Uh, some of my just adopted church family that become aunts and uncles to me. A lot of great people down there that show me love, that show me how to be a person, that show me. Um, they gave me all these humble beginnings, what it meant to serve other people, and to love others, and to guide us, and to show us what family was, and to show me a different way of life. And eventually the anger subsided. It's kind of like the Hulk thing became a smart Hulk. And so, what am I teaching you here? Um, your environment makes a huge difference, and your ability can a rose grow through the concrete? Absolutely, if the conditions are right. Um, can a cactus grow in an environment? Absolutely, if the conditions are right. Sometimes it takes that rose or that cactus or that person to say, I'm just going to find a way. I'm just resilient and angry and frustrated enough to find an answer, to find a way. And so through all these journeys and processes, and I could be here for an hour discussing all the wonderful people, and they know who they are. I thank them, and I thank and I continue to thank, and I can't wait to see them and love on them. And so the deeper mission is I owe a thanks to people who helped me get here. And so through that motivation, it drives me to be better. And I'm reminded every time I craft the story, every time I do these things, I'm reminded that, hey, you have a whole group of people that's rooting for you, and they're excited for you, and they're waiting to see you. And so I'm like, all right, that's the burning fuel, right? Not the anger, but it's still there. The anger is still there. Frustration is still there, right? And so uh, I'm excited to tell this story. I'm excited to talk about overcoming adversity. And here's some things. It took me down to the game of basketball. God blessed me this far, right? And He took me down there, and then I started learning the game of basketball. And then I was just, I was a goofy kid on the sideline. Like, I was just happy to be out the house. I was happy to be around other people. I was happy to experience travel. And if you don't understand the power of what I'm telling you, and understand the power of sports and how sports can, in a positive way, be used to change and teach life lessons, then you'll miss the entire lesson. I think most of the time, people just view sports as, oh, that dumb jock, they get away with everything. No, you don't know that kid's story. And sure, they make mistakes. And so Nick Saban said it best: do we want to penalize a bunch of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds who don't know anything, who don't know any better? And I work with younger than that. So it's like, I got to show them some grace, and God would want us to show some grace, as God has shown all of us some grace. And so that's the part of it. And so, um, I grew and grew and grew, and basketball became an outlet for my emotions and a platform for growth, teaching me discipline, teaching me focus, teaching me